Welcome, quilting friends. I'm so excited that you are participating in Mystery 50 Mini Mystery. It's called Star Bright. I'm Teresa Kanan with Mystery 50, and we have partnered with your favorite quilt retailer to bring this mini mystery to you. The mystery is totally free of charge, my friends. There is no cost for you to join. Star Bright is a super simple small quilt project that can be used as a table topper or a wall hanging. I can't tell you much more about it or else I'll spoil the mystery. To make Star Bright, you will need 6 fat quarters. Your favorite quilt retailer has carefully curated fat quarter bundles that will work perfectly with Star Bright. You can choose to purchase one or more of those bundles, or in the event that you choose to go it on your own and pull from your stash, I have some fabric suggestions for you. As a participant in the Mini Mystery Star Bright, you've received a document that's called Before You Begin. In this document, I have some guidelines to use when choosing your fabrics. You'll find those guidelines on page 2. It also includes a fabric chart, which will help you keep track of the fabrics you've chosen so that as you do your clues, you know which fabrics to cut for each clue. I have a written description for each fabric, but I'm going to show you some of the selections that we've made. Fabric 1 is going to be a focus fabric. It's going to be the fabric that sets the tone for all the rest of your design. It can be a small or a large scale print. It can be solid, it can be directional, or it can be non-directional. Really any fabric that you love. In my example here, fabric 1 is shown gold. The colors that I'm showing you here on this palette will line up with the colors in each one of the clues. Fabric 2 is a companion to fabric 1. It needs to coordinate with it, but not compete with it. It can contrast or complement fabric 1, but it should not overpower it. Fabric 2 should be similar or stronger in value than fabric 1. Avoid using fabrics that are lighter in value than your fabric 1. For example, this fabric is lighter in value and would not work well. In fabric 2, directional prints are not advised. Fabric 3 should support both fabric 1 and fabric 2. It should be distinctly different from fabric 2 in as much as it needs to pop in your quilt. It should be a similar value to fabric 2. Directional prints can be used but are going to need to be used with caution. Fabric 4 is the background fabric. It should contrast with fabrics 1, 2, and 3 and help define that quilt's center. It can be lighter or darker than fabric 1, just as long as the contrast is very clear. Fabric 4 needs to read as a solid, so it doesn't compete with the other fabrics in the quilt. Definitely avoid directional prints to keep the design clean and balanced. Fabric 5 surrounds the other fabrics. It's the framing for the quilt, and it makes the rest of your quilt shine. It needs to pair well with fabric 1, and it needs to complement the palette of the remaining fabrics. Fabric 5 needs to be less busy than fabric 1, and in fabric 5, definitely avoid directional prints. Now, fabric 6 you can wait and make your decision later on. In this bundle, I've included a stripe. Fabric 6 is for your binding. If you prefer, you can finish your quilt and then choose your fabric 6. Your favorite quilt retailer has curated a fabric 6 that will go well with your quilt top. At the bottom of page 2 of the Before You Begin packet, you will find a fabric chart. Take a few moments and clip a small piece of each one of the fabrics to include with your fabric chart, so that when clues come up and there's colors on the clues, you will know which fabrics you're using for each clue. Let me show some other fabrics that have been curated to work with this quilt, to help give you an idea of which fabrics you can choose and which fabrics you should not. This fabric line is by Paula Nadelstern. It's called What If. I absolutely fell in love with this as a focus fabric, so I've chosen it for my fabric 1. For fabric 2, the fabric that complements it, I chose this red and orange, kind of a swirly wave. And for fabric 3, I chose the purple. It's going to give me just the right pop of color that I need. In choosing the background, I couldn't make a decision between the orange or the yellow for fabric 4. And when I stepped back and took a picture, I found that the yellow was very bright and took away from what I was looking for as far as balance. So I'm going with this orange, which is a little more subtle and doesn't pop out of the quilt quite so much for fabric 4. Remember, that's for the background fabric. For the framing fabric, I chose another piece from the polynatal stern line that brings in those same pinks, purples, and oranges. And for the binding, I chose a stripe. I love a good stripe for a binding, and I think this one's going to be a lot of fun. Before I continue, I need to take a slip of each one of these fabrics and include it in my fabric chart. So for these polynatal stern fabrics, my fabric 1 is in the chart, fabric 2, fabric 3, the orange fabric 4, fabric 5 for the frame, and fabric 6 for the binding. What other choices can you make? Your options are unlimited. The key is starting with the focus fabric that you want to use. I fell in love with this wild print by K Facet, so I knew that it was going to be my focus fabric. I looked around for a fabric that could be the framing fabric, and I chose this from the very same line. My next decision was a background fabric, and I chose this background fabric not from the line, but it mimics the circles that are in that feature fabric. And now I'm left with the decision with these 4 remaining fabrics. Which ones will be my companion fabric, which will be my accent fabric, and which will be my binding. Pulling from the colors that are in the focus fabric, I chose the blue for my companion and the purple for my pop of color. I'm going to bind the quilt in this rust, and I'm leaving the pink out. I'll add these fabrics to my fabric chart, and I'll be ready to go. I'll provide you with one more example. Remember, I like to start with the focus fabric, fabric number 1. This beautiful dragonfly fabric by Ann Lauer of Grizzly Gulch is absolutely irresistible. So I chose a fabric that would be used in the framing fabric that came from the line. I think this will look nice when it frames this as a focus fabric. For the complementary fabric, fabric number 2, I've chosen this purple. And for the fabric that's going to pop, fabric number 3, I've chosen this light turquoise. For the background fabric, I've chosen this gray on white print. And for the binding, I'm going to come back in with a dark turquoise from the line. As you can see, any fabrics could work with Star Bright. If you did not purchase a carefully curated bundle from your quilt retailer for Star Bright, and you've chosen to go on your own, and you've used our fabric recommendations that we've made in this video, but you still have questions on whether or not the fabrics will look right in your quilt, check with your quilt retailer. They'll be happy to help you. Or post an image of your fabrics in this group, and your retailer will respond to the image that you post. I wish you well with your fabric selections. I can't wait to see your completed project. Again, I'm Teresa Kanan with Mystery 50, and we'll be seeing you real soon for the Mini-Mystery Star Bright.